Okay, we are in the third Mishnah of Sefer Yetzira, and I actually brought some diagrams tonight I hope to share because I hadn't shown diagrams yet about the 32 pathways, and there really are. The Vilna Gaon has a diagram, and the Arizal has a diagram, so I plan to share that. So let us begin. We've learned two Mishnayos. We know there's 32 pathways. There's 10 Sefiros, there's 22 letters, and then we broke the 22 letters in Mishnah Base into three letters, mothers, Otiot Yesod, and seven double letters, the Beged Kaporet, and 12 simple letters. So that's what we've learned.
Any chance of earphones? Uh,
It won't work on this laptop. I'm on a
oh,
different laptop.
I got it.
Sorry.
Okay.
So I'm in Mishnah Gimel, and here's Mishnah Gimel. Eser Sfirois Belima. Mispar Eser Etzbaot. 10 fingers. Chamesh Keneged Chamesh. Okay. Ubrit Yachid Mechuvenet Be'emtza. Kemilat Halashon Ukemilat Maor. Okay. Let's see how they translated. The 10 Sfirot of Belima, and we've had this term Belima a couple of times. They sometimes write it, but here they wrote it with a space, and here they wrote it without a space. And it's okay to first translate it as nothingness, belima, without anything. Another meaning, though, is we mentioned that in Hebrew, the brakes on your car are
Yeah,
the belamim.
Lamim. Yeah,
Belamim, exactly.
okay, great.
So livlom piv, to close your mouth. The spheros, we can talk about them a little bit. The Sefer Yetzira is mentioning them, but you can't totally grasp them. You can't talk and describe them because they're really beyond our fathoming. Good evening, Reb Daniel. Welcome. We're learning Mishnah Gimel of the Sefer Yetzira. I like to read it again just because this is poetry and this is meditation. So let's say the words. Eser Sphirois Belima. Mispar Eser Etzbaot, Chamesh Keneged Chamesh, Ubrit Yachid Mechuvenet Baemtza, Kemilat Halashon, Ukemilat Maor. The count of 10 fingers, 5 corresponding to 5, with the Brit Yachid, the covenant of the unique one established in the center, like a word of the tongue and circumcision of the aver, I'll say. Okay. So there's a lot to say on this Mishnah because it's sort of what is it talking about? That's a fair question. But it does give us a new insight into the 10 spheroids that they correspond to the 10 fingers. And really, in a way, the 10 toes. And the Zohar, a number of places, says between the 10 fingers of the hand is the tongue, and between the 10 fingers, in Hebrew they're called fingers, in English we call them toes. Between the 10 toes is the bris milah. So there's five bris five and five bris five. And if you think about those numbers, of course, you're going to come up with 22. You're going to have 10 fingers and 10 toes, and brit lashon and brit milah. So again, we're back to the number 22, which is the number of the letters of the Aleph Beis that HaKadosh Baruch Hu used to create the world.
So
So
is the
we're finding another.
blima,
Yeah, Shimon.
sorry, is the blima to kind of put the brakes on both the unitary, the aber and your mouth?
Okay, nice idea. That you can't have logorrhea. You gotta sometimes shut your mouth. That's right. And you can't be sexually profligate, right? You have to control yourself and use self-control. So that's a good idea. That has to do with the Brit, the covenant. You have this power of speech and the power of procreation, but don't just throw it all over the place. You know,
So,
um,
Yeshua, why does he
yes.
spell blima as two words? Blima.
So we mentioned, Daniel, that it could be understood as bilima, which would be we translate it as nothingness. beli shum davar,
Mm.
okay? Because the Sefiros, they have no physical, for sure, they're not physical. And in a sense, they're not even spiritual. They're really conceptual, okay? This is a Kadosh Baruch Hu, these are emanations from Ritzoino Yisbarach. So they're belima, they're nothingness in a certain respect. And what I want to share now, I have on the screen. We're so fortunate to have all these great digital assets. So we have the commentary of Rav Sadia Gaon, and it's sort of surprising that Rav Sadia Gaon wrote a commentary on the Sefer Yetzira, but he did, and we have it in English. Okay, so that's totally unbelievable. I don't believe he wrote it in English, but somebody translated it. So look at what he says: 10 spheres without anything. Rav Sadia explained 10 spheres, as explained above, which are restrained. Okay, he's using the word restraint. This means to say, restrain your mouth from speaking and your heart from pondering. So it's sort of then a paradox. Why are we learning this if we're not supposed to think about it? But I believe that we are supposed to know about it, that it exists, and there's a paradigm to learn here. But we do need to use self-control and restraint. And one of the words for that in Lashon Kodesh could be belima. Like we mentioned, the brakes on your car are the blamim. So you have to put brakes on yourself, on your tongue, and on your bris milah, and on our contemplation of the divinity of the Eser Spherois belima. There, we're talking about them, we're thinking about them, but it has to be bounded and done with humility and self-control, and not thinking that, oh, I know God, or I've totally grasped this and I get this. No, we have to approach it with restraint and humility. Okay? So we see here that just, I mean, I don't know why exactly, but here they put blima as 2 words, and here they put it as 1 word. So I'm talking now about 5 fingers. Eser etzbo, 10 fingers, excuse me. Chamesh keneged chamesh, okay? And the Zohar HaKodesh, for example, this is like an act of prayer, raising your hands, right? And we all can picture Moshe raising his hands to the heavens, and he says he's going to leave the city, the Efroset Kapai, I will put out my hands. The Zohar says anytime you put your hands out like this with your 10 fingers raised to the heavens, that's a spiritual act that's bringing down spiritual energy through the spheroids, because your fingers correspond to the 10 spheroids. And I think it's a Zohar, and it may be partially my interpretation. When we wash mayim achroinim, when you wash mayim rishonim, v'iskadishtem v'yisem kedoshim. When you prepare to eat a meal, you're meant to wash your hands and then hold su'u yedechem koidush uvarchu es Hashem. Some people even say that pasuk when they make netilas yadayim, and they wash and rub their hands, then dry them. And that's an act of kedusha, of preparing ourselves to receive sustenance from God. At the end of the meal, when you wash mayim achroinim, which is to remove the zuama, you're supposed to put your fingers downward, okay? And that's really meaningful, because it's like there is a concept, and I can't say a lot about it. I don't know a lot about it, but there's something called Eser Sefiros de Klipa, okay? There's like a counter of like downwardly pulling forces, okay? Forces of darkness, if you will. And anyway, so we're talking about the Sefer Yetzira is bringing the example of our fingers and our hands. And I want to now share a pasuk that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world kaviyachol with his hands. Okay, I have 2 psukim like that. So, ki eresh shamecha masei etzbeosecha. Let me show you this pasuk. I'll put it in bigger letters. Okay, ki eresh shamecha, when I behold your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and stars that you set in place. So these words, maseh etz be'osecha, referring to the creation of the heavens and earth, shamecha especially, and the moon and the stars, as something that God did kaviyachol with his fingers. And we always know whenever there's anthropomorphisms in the Bible, so it's Dibra Torah kalashon b'nei Adam. the Torah is using human language, referring to the divine, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is ein lo guf ve'ein lo demus haguf. God does not have a body, he's not corporeal, and he can't be compared to anything corporeal. That's like the language of the Rambam, and that's philosophically true, okay? That God is beyond all fathoming and not connected to body whatsoever. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, these words like etzba'oisecha, your fingers, and etzba'ot, we have fingers on our body. Umi bisari echeze eloka, we talked about that by looking at our own body, we can contemplate the divine. And so there's something that the Navi, Yeshayahu, called etzbe'oisecha, and they're not physical fingers. And I'm not saying the Sefiros are God's fingers. It's not like that. But the word etzba'ot and etzba'oisecha has meaning vis-a-vis the divine. We think fingers are ours and God has something like our fingers. It's really on the contrary. God has something called etzba'ois, and we have something that is a dim reflection of that because we were created in the image of God. Okay, so there's true meaning when the Navi says Maseh etzba'osecha, the work of your fingers. That's a very meaningful thing. There's such a thing. God Kaviyachal used fingers again as to create, and we can contemplate that. That is meaning for us, and it's deep, and we can't totally grasp it, but it's something to open our minds to think about. Shimon?
It's mentioned. There's a reference in the Haggadah, uh,
Yad Hashem and the Etzba Elokim.
and when they do all that arithmetic with the 250 and
Right.
everything, if this is
Exactly. If God did
Yad
this with the
Hashem, Etzba
Etzba,
Hashem.
then with his whole hand he did 5 times that much. And so if there was 10 plagues, there was 50, and so on and so forth. Yes. So same idea of Etzba Elokim and Yad Hashem. Steve, did you want to say something?
Yeah, pretty simple thought, but it's like a branding of divine name and the Ten Commandments, in my opinion. Like, it's not odd that our Creator gave us some things attached to the number 10.
If the number 10
Uh,
of
I had a
our
big breakthrough with that 50 years ago, actually, but it was so startling to me. It's like being working on a ranch, being a cow on a ranch in Texas and getting branded with the ranch owner's name, and it felt the ten fingers were a startling sign.
beautiful. Okay, I want to talk more about that, about the Ten Commandments and the 10 Mamaros through which God created the world. Um, Let me just finish this second quote. This is another pasuk. Af yadi yasda eretz vimini tipcha shamayim kore ani alehem ya'amdu yachdav. The English is, my own hand founded the earth, my right hand spread out the skies. I call unto them, let them stand up. We see in this pasuk Yamini, my right hand, and Yadi, which is his other hand, his left hand. So here's another expression of the prophet where he's talking about God in establishing the earth and spreading out the heavens, that he's using left hand, right hand. Okay? So I'm now sharing from Rabbi Kaplan, and let me show you one more picture before I explain this. And these are the pictures I want to share. Okay? These are actually, and it's sort of funny that I didn't show them in the first week, but this is a picture of the 32 pathways. And there are two different versions. This is the Arizal's version of the 32 pathways, and this is the Vilna Gaon's version of the 32 pathways. And just to show you a little bit, the horizontal lines are the three Imaot. Here's Aleph, Mem, and Shin, which are like, we said the earth, or the air, and the water, and the fire. Okay? And of course, these 10 dots or circles correspond to the Sefiros. So this is like Keser, Chochma, and Bina, and here's Chesed and Gvura and Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and here's Malchus. And you note that the positioning of Malchus is different in the Arizal's diagram than in the Vilna Gaon's diagram. Here the Vilna Gaon has here like Keser, Das, playing, inside here. So these are differences. But it's important to recognize sort of the protrusion of Malchus, because the Malchus corresponds to like the feminine that stands across from the masculine. So you have all these Sefiros, and then you have a mirror image of them. Anyway, these are the 22 letters of the Aleph base and the 10 Sefiros, Kaviyachal. This is a diagram going back to Vilna Gaon and the Arizal. And what we see is that the 10 Sefiros are arranged in 3 lines, okay? A central line, a left, and a right. The center line has on it Keser. Let me use the results. Keser, Tiferes, Yesod, and Malchus. Let me show. I have a better one for that. Okay, here I have their names. Keser, Tiferes, Yesod, and Malchus. On the right side, we have Chochma, Chesed, and Netzach. And on the left, we have Bina, Gvura, and Hod. So Reb Aryeh Kaplan describes this configuration of the Sefiros as being in equilibrium. It's like it's like thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Okay, there's a 3 tripartite structure that gives it solidity. It's well based because it has a middle, a left, and a right. So if you have, three legs on a chair, not a chair, but a stool, so it will sit. Okay. Um, but when Hashem is in creative mode, instead of being the 3 lines of left, right, and center, he divides them into just 2 hands, 5 and 5. And how does that happen? Well, Keser and Tiferes are on the right. Keser, Chochma, Chesed, Tiferes, Netzach. And Bina, Gvura, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus are on the left. These are Chasadim, and these are Chamisha Gvurot. And so now there's tension between the 5 and the 5, and Hashem is in creation mode, like he's creating heaven and earth. And there's like masculine and feminine. There's chesed and gvura, giving and taking, between his right hand and his left hand. And that's going to create the heavens and the earth. That's going to be like male and female. And like Steve said, that's going to be the 10 commandments. Note that the 10 commandments are given on 2 luchos. Luchos, and what are they called? Luchos habris. That bris is in the middle, as it were. Like in what we described today in the Mishnah in the Sefer Yetzira, that there's 5 and 5 and something in the middle. The bris lashon, or the bris milah in the middle, okay, which is like capturing, like Yesod, okay? The bris milah corresponds to Yesod. And if you think about it in the very simplest terms, the creative process, reproduction, procreation, you take everything you've got, your whole personality, your mind and body, and everything that you are, and you give that single cell, a sperm cell, which has all your DNA in it, and you give it to the Malchus, you give it to the queen, okay, and you implant it, and she turns it into a whole new being, okay? She creates a whole new person from that, okay? And the pathway through which you did that is Yesod, okay? It's the Aver, it's the Bris Milah, which carried that seed to the Malchus and is the conduit for the creative process, okay? So that's why it's called Yesod, the foundation, because everything that you are gets put through there, and then we can create a new one of you, okay? A new human being. We can reproduce that way. And just to show you one more image here, you can sort of see this person like in a meditative pose. right? There's a name for this pose. What is the lotus pose, right? More or less. And there's an expression in the Gemara about Eliyahu Navi and about Hanina ben Doisa, and it says they would put their head between their knees, okay? Which instead of maybe the lotus pose, maybe they're like sort of hunched over with their head pretty close between their knees, so that your Keser and your Chochmah and your Bina and your Chesed and your Gvura and your Tiferes and your Yesod and so forth, they're all lined up, and you're in this meditative pose of contemplation, and the 10 Sefiros are all lined up, and you have like this power of, let's say, meditation, which again, Rabbi Kaplan interprets the Sefer Yetzira as a book about meditation and using these powers to meditate and create. Okay, so so we're talking about different configurations of the 10 Sefiros, the equilibrium configuration when they're in three lines, left, right, and center, and this male-female configuration when Hashem is ready to create something. For example, he mentions the bris bein absarim, when God told Abraham to take the animals and cut them in two. And so again, you're creating this like dichotomy um, and this energy. And he mentions the Ten Commandments. When the 10 Sefiros are divided into this double array, the place in the middle becomes the focus of spiritual tension. This place is then called the Brit Yachid, or the unifying covenant. Okay, the last, I have one more picture that I want to share, and it's a very beautiful idea. And he says the language, I'm trying to see it again. Brit Lashon. Yes, we had it. But Milata Lashon. I want to talk about the Hebrew word Lashon, which of course means tongue. It also means like, and we have this English expression, how many tongues do you speak? Or he's speaking in tongues. It's a language, right? Lashon is tongue. But we also have in mechanics, there's also a tongue. Your shoe has a tongue, okay? The tongue of your shoe, okay? And there's another place that a tongue is used in mechanics, and that is in a balance, okay? Let me show you that. This is, that might be Lady Justice. She's holding a balance, right? And so this is like an ancient picture.
She should have
An
a
ancient,
blindfold.
yeah, right. The ones that had blindfolds had her, very buxom and provocative. So I didn't take any of those. Here she's at least sanua.
Okay.
Anyway, but I'm focusing not on the lady, but on her scale. Okay. And there's something really fascinating here about the scales. She's holding this piece. Okay. And then there's this piece, and then there's two pans, right? There's essentially four pieces here. It looks maybe a little more complicated, but we could imagine that you could do this with just four pieces. Okay, you need these strings, it's true. But this this could be called the yad because you hold it. It's the handle. You're holding the balance in your hand, and a yad is a handle. Okay, so this is the yud. Okay, and it's the lashon. This is the vav. A vav is a hook, and so this connects the yud to these two containers, which we call, in English, you might call them the pans. In Hebrew, you'd call them the bekaf hamoznayim. So they're like the hands or the palm of the balance. But what I want to share is that this could be understood as a depiction of the Shem Havaya. This is Yud. The crossbar is the Vav, and the two pans are two Heys. The word Hey is used in the Torah when Joseph gives seed to the Egyptians. He says, Hey lecha zera, like here is seed for you. And he's like handing it to them. And the word he uses is a two-letter word, Hey Aleph. Hey Lecha Zera. So this pan, these holders, these hands of the balance could be called hays. Okay, they're the kafa maznayim. So we have here yud ke vav ke, okay, in a certain configuration where the yud is creating the balance. It's like the lashon, okay? It's indicating does this tilt to the right or to the left. It's the lashon of the moznayim. And this is one of the reasons that a Kadosh Baruch Hu insists on honest weights and measures in the Torah. And if you use dishonest weights and measures, not only will you be in violation of the county commissioner, but God considers it an abomination. It angers God greatly because justice and fairness is my name. My name, Yud Ke Vav Ke, can be understood as this balancing of chesed and gvura, of mercy and strict justice, and this balancing between it, the interaction between these moving parts of creation. That is like, that's my name. So don't mess with that, or I will get very angry. It's a corruption of the name through which the world comes into existence. So it's very serious. Okay. So that has to do with the Brit Lashon, the covenant of the Lashon, which is not only the tongue, but it's like this Yud. And this Yud, a Yud is of course 10. There's 10 fingers, and there's 14 knuckles on your fingers if you count, which spells Yad. Yud Dalet is Yad, 14 knuckles on your 5 fingers. And the word Yud is spelled Yud Vav Daled, which equals 20, because we really have 20. We have, 2 hands and 2 feet. So coming back to this configuration, let me come back to the text. Coming back to the configuration of the Sefiros, that generally they're in groups, they're in 3 groups of left, right, and center, but sometimes they're grouped into 5 and 5 in like a creative capacity of male and female. I do want to mention one more configuration before I finish up tonight, and that is the top 3 of Keser, Chochmah, and Bina. And let's think for a moment about Chochmah and Bina as being like left brain, right brain, the two lobes of your brain, like analytical thought and knowledge. Chochmah is koyach ma, it's data, knowing stuff, and Bina is interpreting and analyzing it. And Keser is like a crown, which isn't in your head, it's on your head, it's above you. It's the general radiation, that is in the field that contains everything. That's where Keser is. So Keser, Chochmah, and Bina are up here in our brain, in our mind. And so those 3 are often called Gimel Rishonos. The Hebrew abbreviation is Gimel Reish Gar. So the Mekubalim use the term Gar for these 3, like your head space, getting into your head, okay, is your Keser, Chochmah,
wrapping your
Bina.
head around.
Wrapping your head around things, good. And then you have Zayin Tachtoinim. You have 7 other Sefiros. You have your left arm and your right arm and your torso and your legs and Bris Milah and your Badzug, Kaviyachol. So the Sefiros are often organized, or at least considered, in 3 and 7. Gimel Rishonos and Zayin Tachtoinos, okay? Because stuff happens in your head, but it's all in your mind. When it comes down into the world of reality and you do it, you take the hammer, you kick the ball, whatever, you use your arms and your legs and your body to do stuff, that's like the Olam Hamaisa. So my goal this evening was to introduce these configurations of the 10 Sefiros. The Sefer Yetzira talks about 5 and 5 corresponding to 2 hands, 10 fingers. And we talked about usually they're in an equilibrium configuration of 3 lines of the middle and the left and the right. And sometimes they come into these face off, like at the Ten Commandments, like at the Asara Mamaros, God creating the world, like it says God created the world with his left and right hand. And sometimes we think about the Sefiros as what's up in the mind and what's down here in the world of action. Okay? So that was what I wanted to share tonight. Thank you, everybody, for participating in it.
Thank
Have a
you.
great week.
Thank you.
All too. Good night. Shalom, shalom.